So, coming into this data slate, there's been quite a lot of changes. People have been dubbing this as 10.5, which I think is a really fair way to describe the massive upheaval we've had. There's going to be a huge shift in the meta. I think there's going to be a lot of things that were good that are no longer good, things that weren't good before now might be good. And I'll be honest, it's really hard to predict what is going to be the next big thing in 2 or 3 months' time. But with all that said, we've got some exciting changes to go through for Adeptus Custodes. First of all, we've got 2 changes in the balanced data slate. First of all, Shield Host. You get to pick one of 2 buffs. Normally, you only get to choose it once per game. That's been changed now. At the start of the battle round, you choose 1 buff to pick throughout the entirety of that battle round. Realistically, you're going to have 5+, critical hits on a 5+ every game. That means that when you pick your martial katars, you're either going to have lethal or sustained hits on a 5. I don't need to tell you how good that is. You're going to have more hits on average than you do have attacks if you go for the sustained hits. If you need to kill big things, lethal hits, a third of your attacks just automatically wounding. Incredible, which is terrible. I opened my mouth and that came out, but never mind. That's just how excited I am about Adeptus Custodes. The second big change is Auric Champions. Previously, this was you'd get +1 to wound on a certain target you'd pick at the start of the battle round. You'd have to pick it, then your character models would get +1 to wound against it. This is terrible. The whole lore rationale behind Adeptus Custodes is that they are all heroes in their own right. They're all incredible warriors, but this detachment meant that only certain models were getting some sort of buff. It's not good. Now it's been changed. Now it's +1 to wound for all models in a character unit. So are you going to be running perhaps lots of shield captains? Because there's another change coming up that might be quite exciting, especially for Auric Champions. I think you might be. But even if you're not, even if you're running, for example, Blade Champions, Advance and Charge is still very, very good. This means that you can have full units with +1 to wound against targets. And with the quality and quantity of attacks that Adeptus Custodes bring, I don't think I need to tell you just how good that is. So, 2 real big output buffs for Adeptus Custodes. We're still not back where we were when we were the incredibly tanky points denial. You just sit in the middle of the board, your opponent can't do anything about it, but they are now quite an efficient, maybe glass hammer, so I think it'll be interesting to see how they do, especially on terrain like WTC terrain or Games Workshop terrain, where you might be able to get in the thick of it and really just pound. Moving on, we've got other changes. Now, these are other changes that came in the data slate, but they aren't necessarily specific to Adeptus Custodes. First of all, battle line, they're now more important in Pariah Nexus. I'm not going to say that they are the most important thing, but Custodian Guard, while not the most efficient unit in the Custodes book, they're still pretty good. You can run real MSU Custodes still, which is lots of T6 wounds. You've got a 2-up save, you've got a 4-up invuln. Something to think about. It's definitely a style that I was thinking about when I was writing my list, but it's not quite as exciting as what I went with. Heroic Intervention, now 1 CP. This is absolutely huge. Adeptus Custodes lost a lot of fight phase control. Obviously, other armies can use it into you, but if you're playing multiple overlaying units, such as like an MSU Custodian Guard build, then this is something that's really strong. You'll be able to get multiple units in, and you're tanky enough to survive, because obviously Heroic Intervention doesn't give you fights first. You do have to wait until, your opponent's charging units have fought. So, really strong buff here, especially, again, with the captains being able to reduce any strats by 1 CP. So, that's a good one. Captains, they reduce a strat by 1 CP. It's no longer battle line locked. Sorry, it's no longer battle tactic locked, I should say. Got too excited about the Pariah Nexus changes. So, previously, you were looking at only a couple of strats per detachment. It was very feast or famine. This change did come in because of Custodes. They were too good with the ability to use their index detachment strats for free too frequently. So this change has come in quite a nice change. Obviously, Adeptus Custodes strats are nowhere near as overpowered and over oppressive as they were before. So still very good. Also, Devastating Wounds and Mortal Wounds. That change is really nice now. Obviously, Adeptus Custodes have lost their protection from Dev Wounds with some exceptions, but there are, for example, strats that give you a 4-up Mortal Wound protection. Now, Devastating Wounds are lumped in with that. You don't need a specific FAQ to say Custodes get protection against Dev Wounds. They just get Mortal Wound protection in general with the strat. Very nice here. Always good to be able to protect your stuff. Codex Points changes. This is a sweeping list of changes. We have 1. So it's the Castellan Mark, which is The redeploy strat, one of the changes that's happened is there is now a redeploy step in Pariah Nexus. This is fine. Now you have to redeploy before you know if you're going first or second. That's terrible. Because of that, it has taken a bit of a points cut. I haven't written it on here. I think it might have been 30 or 35 before, but it's now down to 20. I think it's fine. You can set up refused flanks. It's not the sort of style that I like to play. It's not where I want to put my points. But if you've got 20 spare points and know where to put it, you can at least make your opponent think during deployment phase. How about the Forge World points changes? Now, these are spicy. So there are a few here that I think are fine. Maybe some things that you look at that might be a little bit exciting down the line, but we'll sort of get to. And then there's one that I'm very excited about. Top to bottom, Adeptus Custodians, they're down to 225 points. That's 15 points. That is the Forge World jet bike. I think that might put them in line with 3 regular jet bikes. I'll be honest, I didn't double check. I'm still not actually sold on jet bikes as a unit, so I've kind of just left that one as it is. But if you want to run them, if you want to use them, lovely. You can use them a bit more efficiently. Aquilin Custodians, these are the Forge World Terminators. They've taken a 15-point cut as well for 3, and that means that you can run them at the same price per model as the... I was going to call them Aquilin. The... whatever the regular Terminators are called. There's too many A's and C's in this army. So, you can't run them as a 2, you have to run them as a 3. They do also have the uppy-downy strat. They don't have rerolls against characters. They have reroll 1s against the closest target. It's a little bit of a wash. I personally still like the 2-model squads of regular Terminators more, using them as a scoring piece and, being surprisingly lethal against character units. But there's play here again if you want to use your cool models with flamers. And the Power Fists are actually better than the Custodian Spears, so that's something to weigh up. You lose a little bit of firepower, but you gain a little bit of melee. Then you've got the Pithright Spear Custodian Guard. That is the Melter or the other option on the guard there. I believe there's 2 options. These are still a little bit more expensive than Custodian Guard, I think, from memory. I'm probably not going to run them over Regular Guard. Regular Guard are battle line, and that does come with a host of buffs potentially being useful in Pariah Nexus. You can join Kyriadraxis to them. That's the main reason, let's be honest. But if you're looking at sort of an MSU build where you're looking at running a lot of basic Custodes just with guns, I think these are quite exciting. They do have to come as a 5, which is a downside. You can't run them as a 4, but definitely something to consider if you want to run lots and lots of base Custodes models. Palace Gravitac down to 105 points from 120. This is fine, I think. The reasons that you take this is if you want something that's small, quite easy to hide, more of a scoring piece than anything else. It's mobile, it's tanky-ish as light vehicles go. It's aggressively okay. I think there's better scoring pieces for Custodes, such as those 2 model squads of Terminators, but this is actually cheaper than those, so there might be a world where you slip one of these in. Maybe you need to cut 15, 20 points. I guess it's 25 points. Yeah, maybe you need to cut 25 points, and you want to change some Terminators for Palace Gravitac. I wouldn't judge you. Worth giving a try if you've got one. Telemon Heavy Dreadnought down to 215 points from 235. The Telemon's days of glory, I think, are behind it, but 215 points is pretty cheap, for what you get. I'm not super sold on this, but I think it's at a price point where I'm willing to give it a go. The problem does come in where the regular Custodes melee is so good, and they're so mobile in comparison to a big bulky vehicle. And the Caladius Grav tanks, their shooting is so much better than the Telemons. I think it's hard to find a niche for the Telemon, but maybe you want to go full gun and you want to go full Forge World, or you just have the model and it's cool. I think you can put this on the table again and not feel too bad about it. So that's an interesting space to be in, and hopefully we see some more Telemons. I know I've lost many of games of them, so excited to see some absolute PTSD inducing monsters across the table from me. And finally, it's probably obvious which one I'm excited about because I've made it blue. Venatari lose 35 points for 3. That is huge. They're now down to 165 points for 3. So if you're looking at a points per model, that's what? 71, no. Maths escapes me. 55 points per model. That's only, I think it's 10 points more than a regular Custodian Guard. It's embarrassing. I've forgotten how much a regular guard is because I normally just look at the full squad cost. But 55 points a model. These things are incredible. They get to Heroic Intervention for free. And I believe It's specifically in the new changes, you can still do it twice with the changes to how free strats are worded, because it specifically mentions heroic intervention. But I will double check that one. Do double check it yourself if you want to run around with it. But they're also good if you just sit them behind buildings and you charge with them. You know, they're basically Custodes that have lance, so they're wounding you much better than they would be, especially if you combo them with one of the, for example, crits on 5s. You can do a real scary amount of damage with these things. So, speaking of a scary amount of damage with Venatari, let's have a look at the list that I've put together, which I think might be an interesting direction to take them on. Full disclosure, this is mostly Rory's list. Rory, my friend, who has beaten me multiple times playing Custodes, so shout out to you. This is the list that he was coming up with, and I think just looks fantastic. I've made a couple of small tweaks here, I believe. So, first of all, Shield Host. Shield Host is, I think, the most exciting of the changed attachments. I wouldn't say you shouldn't play Auric as well, but this is the one that has my attention because it's, you know, very straightforward. It's just an absolute bludgeon to beat your opponent around the head with. So you start off with a single character, which is a Blade Champion. I went for the Panis. I'm not going to even try. So the enhancement there that I can't pronounce on the screen, it just gives you ignores cover on your shooting for the wardens that he joins. It's not worth taking, but I had spare points, so chucks that on. I've got also Kyria Draxus, who is a non-Adeptus Custodes character. Obviously will be joining the Custodian Guard, doing all the things that she loves there. Double shooting, rerolling wounds if the Custodian Guard are touching an objective, all that great stuff. Then there are also, and I've forgotten to delete one of these, there's only one squad of 2 Alaris Terminators. Apologies for that. I'll see if I can black that out in the editing. I've got a squad of 5 Wardens, which again the Blade Champion joins. I've got a 6, a 3, and a 3 on the Venatari. They are so good. I was playing them at 200 points. I wasn't playing 12 of them at 200 points, but I was really enjoying playing them before the Codex came out. They're just a very smashy unit, and with crit hits on 5s, I'm excited to see how they do. Then 2 Caladius Grav Tanks. These are your tin openers. We're potentially going into quite a vehicle-heavy meta. I think CSM looked like the Iron Hands-esque build around Abaddon, and the vehicles looks the best. Even though Ironstorm has been nerfed, overall, I think it's still going to be probably a tasty one to go. There'll be adaptations there. People like straightforward shooting lists when they're relatively efficient, so I think this is a really good thing to be able to pop a couple of vehicles. It's relatively mobile for a gun platform as well. Obviously, fly doesn't mean what it used to, but it still, you know, gets around the board, gets some angles, which is really nice. Then scoring another couple of units of Witch Seekers, 2 units of 4, and Kyria Draxus, as previously mentioned, to go with the Custodian Guard. That's all I've got for you today. Let me know if you've got any other thoughts on Custodes. I'm genuinely excited to give them a try. I think I'll be running them probably some point this week into probably some Chaos Space Marines. Be interesting to see how they do 2 melee armies.